Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start the Shavuot daf Lamed Vav. We are going to begin on Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, about 5 lines from the top. Now we were learning regarding this parak of Shavuot Eidos that it was necessary, as we saw in yesterday's Mishnah on daf Lamed Hey, that in order to be chayiv, it's necessary that you actually have to say Hashem's name. Now the question is, does it also require only Hashem's name, Hashem HaMiyuchid, or could it be other Shemos? Our Mishnah says even Kinuyim. So we saw at the end of yesterday's daf that when it comes to the din of Basaita, that's necessary when it comes to that Shavuot, it has to be B'Shem. So too, apparently, also when it comes to Shavuot Eidos, it's Dafka B'Shem, and now the Kinui, so I ended up saying was a Machlok, Rabbi Chanina bar Idi, and the Rabbanan. So in this, the Gemara continues, Amar Babu, Manayin L'Allah, with regarding to a curse, Shehi Shavuot, that this is a Shavuot, which again is linked to the pasuk regarding the Sota, that it says, we just line right above, V'shama Koil Allah, V'shama Allah, V'shama Koil. Okay, so Shnamar V'yavo Oiso B'Olah V'Goymer. So, if we look in Rashi, Haching Arsin and Kach Shnui B'Toras Kohanim. What it means, how do we find a Shavuot with a curse? Shavuot shlo nitmis, v'im nitmis yavo voch. That you have to basically make a Shavuot that you didn't become tummy with this man you were secluded with, and if otherwise you're going to end up being punished. So, v'yavo oiso ba'ol v'garmer, v'ksiv v'gam b'melch and milcha netzar, marad asher hishbiu belokim. So, he also rebelled as he made a Shavuot against God. Okay. It says Rashi, V'yavo oisu ba'olah Nebuchadnezzar Sidkiyahu. So Nebuchadnezzar said this against Sidkiyahu. Tana Oror, when it comes to the word Oror, Bo Nidoi, it has in it an element of Nidoi. Bo Klola has an element of curse. Bo Shvua, so it can have these different connotations. Bo Nido Dechsiv Oro Morois Amar Malach Hashem Or Yoshveha. So we see, first of all, that it has this the word Oror. Yerma'ula Ba'arba Mea Shipuri Shamte Barak Lamorois. That with 400 blasts, he was Shamte, he was excommunicated. So you see the word Oror could have to do with the language of excommunication, or Shamta. Bo Klola, Dechsiv Ola Yamdu Ala Klola. So you see again, the word Ola is a curse, which is the general translation. Dechsiv Oror Ha'ish Asher Yasa Pasel V'Gaimer, someone who makes an idol. Bo Shua, Dechsiv Yishva Yehoshua Be'esahi Lemor, made a Shua Oror Ha'ish Lifnei Hashem V'Gaimer. So we see that there's these 3 different elements when it comes to Allah. Question 7. Le'elu gimel devarim mishamish lashon oror. So the word oror could mean nidoi, klola, and shvua. And this actually is also the very first question of... actually, it's not the first question, TV1. Okay. All right, so on this, the Gemara asks the question. So you're telling me that this is a proof that the word or could mean nidoi, klola, and shvua. So, for the Gemara, v'dilma tarti avadulhu, ashbinhu, v'litinhu. How do we know a shvua? So maybe it's because he was cursed. El mahacha. So look in Rashi. Rashi says, v'dilma tarti avad. Oror lav lashon shvuhu. How do we know that the word oror is the language of a shvua? So that's the question. El mahacha v'ish Yisrael nigash b'yomahu v'yoyel shoyel esam lemor. Here it says oror ha'ish asher yoichel v'goymer v'ksiv, and also in Shmuel Aleph it says v'yonasan lo shama b'hashpia aviv esam. And he mentions the language of a shvua. So we see the link between cursing and shvua. Maybe again there was a shvua and he was cursed. But how do we know that the word or means shvua? Maybe they're two separate things. So miksiv or doesn't say vit or, so therefore it must. There's no therefore it's linked. So hashdias l'hachi, this is the same thing. Hashdias l'hachi hasam nami also by Yeshua looks at v'or. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, amen. What is the meaning of amen? And this is TB1. Eil gimel devar mashmios heish me'amiris amen. So here we go, starting off with TB1. What does amen mean? Boy shvua. So one element could be shvua. Says Rashi, ha'ina amen achar shvua k'mayte shvua piv. That, and we had this before, that if you answer amen, it's ki'ilu, like you actually said it. Okay, that's one. Kabbalas devar, so bo shvua, bo kabbalas devarim, bo emunas devarim. So those are the three things. So bo shvua, bo kabbalas devarim, like you're accepting something. Says Rashi, Amel chaveru al manas shetikayimli tanai, you should fulfill this condition. The Yermer amen. So then kibbul devarim, you're accepting his words. Boy hamanas devarim. The other one is belief in a matter. Says Rashi, v'oy la'anos amen al davar tefillah v'tchina. You have to, whenever you hear a bracha or some prayer, you answer amen. Shuloshin mamin hadavarim shehi ratzon shehi amen kain emes kain. So it should be Hashem's will that this is what it should be. So again, this is the answer for TB1. And I wrote Haidas Ledavar or Kabbalas Devarim, Shvua and Haftachas Hadavar. Okay, so the correct answer, I'm not sure, is Bosh is Shvua, Kabbalas Devarim, and Ha'emanas Devarim. Okay, so it's Kabbalas Devarim. Okay, I'm just erase this. Shvua, Kabbalas Devarim, and Amenes Devarim. That's what we're looking for. Let's get it right. Okay. Boy Shvua dechsev v'yamar ha'isha amen amen. So, and that's a Shvua. Boy Kabbalas Devarim dechsev ara shelo yakim es divrei hatayra hazai slasai saisam v'yamar kol amen. And the answer amen. So obviously by saying amen, it's like you're accepting whatever was being said as correct. Bo ha'emanas devarim dechsev v'yamar Yirmiyahu hanavi el Chaniyahu amen kain yasa Hashem, so Hashem should do. Yokum Hashem as tavarecha, Hashem should withhold your words. Omer Rabbi Lezer, lav, when it comes to the word lav, it could mean shvua, hein shvua. When you say no or yes, depending on the context, it also can mean shvua. Now, bishlam alav shvua dechsev v'lo yeh oid hamayim lo ma'abel, that there Hashem basically swears that there will never be another flood. And it says v'lo dechsev ki mei noach zois li asher nishbaiti. So it says that Hashem actually made a shvua. So the word lo is linked to a shvua. Elahein shvua manon. How do we know? That's svarhu. Midalav shvua, heinami shvua. If lo is a shvua, then the opposite should also be a shvua. So Rabba v'hu d'omer lav trei zimni. V'hu d'omer hein trei zimni. It's not enough that you just did it once. You actually have to say it twice. It says first of all v'lo yicharis kol baser oid mimei hamabel v'lo ye'oid hamayim l'mabel. Now it says it twice, the word lo. Umidalav trei zimni. Hey nami tre zimni. So therefore it has to be done twice for it to work. Okay. And then the Mishnah said that hamakalel bekulan chay d'ramer v'chachamim paitun. When it comes to a kinoi and you're mevarchas Hashem, you blaspheme, you curse God, are you chayiv even by kinoi? So it's machlok. Taban ishish ki yikalel kav. When you curse Hashem v'nosachetto and you bear sin. Mata v'lamar v'lkav nemar v'nikim shem Hashem mois yumos. We know it's a death penalty. Yachol v'yehei chayiv el al shem hamiyuchid b'vad. Only when it comes to Shem hamiyuchid. Menan Rabbi says had kinuyim Talmud Leimer ish ki yikalel kav v'gaimer mikol makom d'ibra meir. So Rameir holds in all, even any kinoi. V'chol amorim al shem yuchid b'misa v'yal ha kinuyim b'azhara. No. When it comes to the Shem Yuchid, the name of 4 letters, which is a Yud and a Hey, then Taka, that's Misa. But a Kinoi is an Azhara, because the pasuk says Elokim lo sekalel. Okay. Habakal of Imo also is a machlokas v'chul. Suman chachamim Rabbi Menachem bar Yosi. This time Rabbi Menachem bar Yosi Omer b'nikvu shem yumos. So a person curses Hashem, then you'll die. Matam l'em Hashem li'made al hamakal of Imo sheinu chayiv ad shikalim b'shem. So he learns also over there, you're only chayiv when you actually use Hashem's name. Rashi says, Kroy Yiserhu, v'tinu inyan l'makal aviv, sheinu chayiv, ashikal m'shem ha'miyuchid. So it's like in enu inyan, so therefore you're going to be chayiv only if it's shem ha'miyuchid. Hamakal atzma v'chavero, so you're also chayiv, chayiv misa, but you're not allowed to curse yourself or your friend, b'chul. Rav Yanai v'dibur ha'koil, atzmo, so you're not allowed to curse himself. That everyone agrees, because the pasuk says that you have to protect yourself very much. So therefore, you can't do anything which is harmful to yourself. Kid Rabbi Avin, so it's a lav. The chavero. How do we know about cursing your friend? They're not allowed to curse someone who is deaf. Says Rashi, Dolo teima hoyel v'kroy yiseir hu l'rabos tindu in l'rabos afa makal atzma v'chavero el davka kaimer v'menachem l'rabos makal aviv shu v'skila, only him, but ba'atzma v'chavero dela ba'alma, you're not going to be chayiv skila, but it's a lav. Okay, fine. Kach yacha Hashem Elokim v'chen yacha Elokim. So Hashem's going to will hit you and curse you. Zuhi olak subatayra. So Yosef Rav Kahana Kamedu Rabbi Yehuda v'Yosef v'Kaimer ha masnisin. This actually is a Mishnah Kiditnan. Or Malay kacha or Malay kana. So switch around the words around, not about me. So Yosef Ahu Rabbana Kamedu Rav Kahana v'Yosef v'Kaimer, by Doyeg it says Gam al yischa netzach yichatcha v'yischa me'oil b'sharshacha me'eretz chayim sela. Armlei kana tarti lamli. So why does it say these 2 kinoyim? So ma'adatei mahadamilim asnis avol b'kroi imaloi mechaninan kamash malon. So what does that mean? It says Rashi. Rav Kahana haya shayna mishnasenu k'moy shehim shenuya yacha v'chein yichachem, that he taught it the way it was actually read. And so he said, Amalei Rehuda kacha kana hafoch devaracha keneged acherim. Flip it opposite. Amar yachu v'chein yachem shel tekel neni. Okay. Okay. Let's look at question 8. Question 8 says, "Hamavarach es Hashem oyamakal ovev imo b'kino yim chayev." So makal es Hashem v'chein makal ovev imo b'kino is a machlokas, which we saw really in the Mishnah. Hamakal atzmo chaver b'kino ha'im oiver b'lav. So this also is pretty clear. Hamakal chaver v'chein es atzmo b'kino oiver b'loisaseh. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. All right. Good. Let's look at question TA30. Be'ez oifen oimer lav ohein hu b'shvua. So if you im omer lav trezimni ohein, then you would be, that's when you would be chayv. I actually got that one wrong, which is a shame because it's not a hard question, but sometimes that's how it goes. Let's just find this in the Gemara. Behudia trezimni. This is TA30. Okay. All right, let's keep on going. So, but a very interesting vort about, you're not allowed to bully yourself, you're not allowed to curse yourself. It's not acceptable. It's under the category of hishamocha ma'oid. You have to take care of yourself, and part of taking care of yourself is not putting yourself down. It's an interesting vort. So fine. Al yached, do not be cursed and punished. V'yavarcheka v'tavlach, and if you do the right thing, then it will be good for you. So Rameir Mechayev Chum Paitun. So here we have a machlokas. If they testify that they won't be punished or they'll receive sechar, is this a lashon shvua? So it depends on mechal alav atashmei hein, which we're going to see now. Abho leisle Rameir Mechal alav atashmei hein. How could Rameir be mechayev? He doesn't hold mechal alav atashmei hein. So we're going to say, right, flip it around. Kios Rabbi Yitzchak Tana Kidit Nan. Says naturally keep it the way it is. So if it's the way it is, and Rameir doesn't hold mechalav atashmei hein. Rabbi Yosef Hashna Diana Tanan Hachi. Since we learn it this way, V'chi Asar Rabbi Yitzchak Tani Hachi Shema Mina Davka Tanan. It must be that's how it's supposed to be. How it's supposed to be. Elakasha. So how do we understand it? If Rameir elsewhere holds that we do not say mechalav atashmei hein, so how come over here it does work? That you'll be chayiv. So he says like this: El kasha kiles le b'mamoina. When, for example, in the Gemara in Kedushin, which we'll see in a second in Rashi, then by dini mominis we say that we do not apply mechalav atashmei hein. Says Rashi, Rameir Omer kol tanai sheinu kofel ketanai to bnei Gad bnei Ruvain enu tanai. So you have to, like bnei Gad bnei Ruvain, they said, if you fight with us in Eretz Canaan, then you'll be able to get the lands on the Transjordan. But if you don't, then you won't. Right? So we went out from here that you have to say the opposite as well. Now the ilu kafle lo amrin mechal zeh atashmei et zeh. We don't infer anything, even though you can understand that l'chayra, if you do, then you'll get the land. Mashma, if you don't fight with us, you won't get the land. But you still have to specify because Rameir holds mechalav atashmei hein. He does not hold of that. So if that's the case, how does he say it over here that you're chayav? So by the case of Mammon, so then we don't hold of this. Avul be isura islay. However, when it comes to our case of isurim, of Shuas Eidos, so in that case he will hold mechalav atashmei hein, and therefore you'll be chayiv. Tani hachi shema minad. So that's the answer. Be isur islay. Ari hari cited isurhu. When it comes to dinim of site, that's isur. So if it's isur, then we should say that he does hold mechalav atashmei hein. The Yomi Rav Tanachlin bar chachinoi. It says hinaki ksiv. Time to ksiv hinaki, that you're clean. Halav hachim echlal lav atashmei hein lo amrinan. So it says hinaki and hinaki. You'll be punished like with chenek. Not exactly that's the punishment, but you'll be killed. If not, then you'll be cleansed from the claim of you having been tummy with this man. So why is that necessary? So we'll actually learn out from Saita that we do require the opposite. So if that's the case, why is that necessary? I thought Rameir holds that we hold mechalav atashmei hein when it comes to Isser. So el ipuch, you're right. Flip it around. Afil be isur leislei. Rameir never holds of mechalav atashmei hein. So masko Rabina uvi isur leislei, and now you tell me by Isser he doesn't hold that. El miyata shisui yayin puriroish. When it comes to a person who is drinking wine, says Rashi, the b'misa loy shaminan. Well, it doesn't mention anything about the death penalty. El hein mechlalav dechsev yan v'shecher al teisht v'lo samusu. Don't drink wine when you enter into the mikdash, and if you don't drink wine, you won't die. Which is ha'im tishtu bivuachem el oil moed tamusu. So why would you be punished? Because l'chayra it's mechlal that we must see. We hold mechal lav atashmei hein because shesu roish puri roish shesu yan puri rosh. So Rameir Vatanan Elishu Bamisa Shusyan Rosh. So he does say Mechal Avatashmei hein when it comes to this. El Oilam Tepach. Do flip it around. Kile Slay B'Mamoina. He does not hold it when it comes to money, as we said before. But B'Yisur Islay, he does hold, which is the reason why in our Mishnah he so Kile Slay B'Mamoina. And that's why I have to do it tonight. Kofel. B'Yisur Islay. However, when it comes to Isser, he does hold this. So the question is, how by Soita? Soita is Isser. The Shani Soita, the Isser, the Isber Mamaynahu. because there is an element of money, says Rashi, gvias ksubasa, because if it turns out that she's guilty, so she's not going to get her ksuba, right? Our mission is about money. Oh, so that's how you flip it around. So our case is actually money, because Shavuos Eidos is not just a case of Isser, but it's also a case of money. So when it comes to Saita, it's also a case of money. And therefore, because of that, that's the reason why Rav Meir will make this distinction. So you're right. When it comes to Dini Momnus, so he requires both sides. However, when it comes to Isser, for example, by Shisui Yayin, there he does not require it. Okay. Okay. So that completes the fourth parak. And now we're going to learn about Shavuos B'Kadoin. Now we have already learned a lot about Shavuos B'Kadoin, but now we have a Mishnah and a parak designated to it. So, no heges ba'anashim, unlike Shavuos Eidos, which is Eidos, therefore has to be someone's kosher Eidos, can't be an apostle, can't be a woman, can't be a karov. Over here it doesn't matter. So, and the only reason why it mentions is even though it's obvious. So it's just because we talked about Shavuos Eidos with this lashon, so we contrast it to Shavuos B'Kadoin. So now it's about Nashim, men and women, Karivim, far and close, Shem Psulim. Now this word gets a little bit more challenging. Mipnei Bifnei Beistin, Shul Bifnei Beistin. Whether you're in the Beistin or not in front of the Beistin, you made the Shvuah saying that or amen, that definitely it's not true. I don't know anything about this object in someone else's domain. And then afterwards you admit that you did know the chichesh ba'misai. So mapi atzmai. If the shul was made on his own, then you're always going to be chayav. Or mapi acherim, which means shlo and amen. You didn't answer amen. Says Rashi, inu chayav ad sheyichbar bebeistin. You have to deny it in the beistin. Mishum de mushma mapi acherim bibikadam luksiv. It doesn't mention anything in the case of mapi acherim in the psukim. We learn out from Shavuos Eidos. The Srila Rameir doin mina mina, that we compare our Shavuos B'Kadoin to Shavuos Eidos. V'hasam bebeistin. When it comes to Shavuos Eidos, obviously Eidos has to be done in a court. The Srila Rameir doin mina mina, v'hasam bebeistin k'deprishim b'pirkin l'el. Since we don't know anything about Mepi Acherim from the Psukim, we're only deriving it from Shavuos Eidos. The Shavuos Eidos is only in the Beistin, therefore Mepi Acherim eno chayav ad shichru bebeistin b'ramer. Cholam Amri, no, bein mipnei atzmin mipnei Acherim, doesn't make a difference, even if it was through someone else. Kivan kafar bo chayiv, which is mashma according to Chachamim l'chayra, even if it's shul b'fnei Beistin. The chayiv al zadan hashvua, and you're going to be chayiv a carbon when you're mazid. Also, also, if there is this element of shoygig and mazid kind of like mixed in, if you will. Says Rashi, so when it comes to Shavuos B'Toy, it says Venelam, which is only b'shoygig. It doesn't say that by Shavuos B'Kadoin. Shavuos B'Kadoin is not just Shavuos B'Kadoin, which we actually Shavuos B'Kadoin we saw on Daf Lamedan Mabeis that we compare Shavuos B'Kadoin to Me'ilah, that it's b'shoygig, but not Shavuos Eidos, which you're chayav shoygig ein mezid. So Shavuos B'Kadoin is taka only b'shoygig, so on some element of shoygig. So Shavuos B'Kadoin. So what is this? So v'ashkagasa im zadan habikadoin. So in this case, he thought it was time. It was true when he made the shvuah, or he didn't know this shvuah required a carbon. They know chayav al shkagasa gredasa. But if you're totally shoygig, that's like an oinus that you had no idea, then you're going to be considered potter. So Rashi says v'chayav al zadin shvuah duksibu v'nelam zadin shvuah shezachar al pikadain v'yodeh shechayav al kfirasu carbon. Okay. If you're shogeg b'carbon, so then that's enough that you're going to be chayiv, right? So you didn't realize that there was a carbon, even you were amazed on the bikadain, fine. However, if it's shaking straight up, im savar, says Rashi, lishava be'emes mishum da'inasu, you mamash that you're saying the truth at that time of the shvua, then you're going to be potter. Uma chayev, so what would you be chayev? Al zedaina asham bekesav shkolim. You're chayev to bring a carbon asham, unlike when we talk about shvuas bitoi. So when it comes to a shvuas hapikadain or a shvuas edus, shvuas bikadain, we do not do an oil of a yored or a chatas, but rather it's an asham kavua, and it is bekesav shkolim. So it's again a specific amount, as Rashi stipulates. Shvuas hapikadain ketzad. So Omulo, what's the case? Tainle pikdaini sheish biyadcha. So give me my pikadon. So shvuah she'enucha biyadi, I don't have it. O shiarmulo enucha biyadi. So mashbiachani, swear that you don't have this item in your domain. Yarmamein. Haraz chayiv. In that case, he will be chayiv. Hishbiah of chamish pamim. Let's say he made a shvuah 5 times. Bein b'fnei beisdin, bein shelo b'fnei beisdin. Whether in or out, the kafar, and he denies it, chayiv ochlaks v'yachas. You're chayiv every single time. Amr Shimon Matam, what is the reason why? Because you can always retract and admit after each time. And it's not like Shavuot Eidos, where again, once we said by Eidos, over here it's Shavuot Mikadain, you can be chayav multiple times. So let's say you have 5 people claiming. So right, you have this Pikadon. And there's all these 5 people saying this, and he responds, Shavua shein lochem biyadi, it's not in my hands, and because he basically only made one Shavua. Shavua shein lochem biyadi, v'lo locha, chayv kolaks v'achas. This is where in Kedushin is actually a little bit of a difficult, one of the harder pieces in Masechtas Kedushin. It's not a hard Masechta, but this is brought down over there. If you say, v'lo locha, chayv kolaks v'achas, so that's considered to be like a prat, that you specified each one. But no, you actually have to say the word shvua bi'achreina. Says Rashi, Einocha biyadi locha v'locha b'shvua. The hashtakam is shvua kul. Then the shvua is linked to all of them. You have to say for each one shvua, 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 each one, for them to be separate. Otherwise, it's considered only chayv one. Tainli pikada nechumas yad gezel v'aveda sheish biyadcha. So this is one claimant, but he says that you have multiple different things in your hand. You have a bikadain, you have a chumas yad, you have something which is stolen, you have something lost, right? So shvuah she'enucha biyadi, I don't have any of these things. So essentially, he said one language. Shvuah she'enucha biyadi pikadain, chumas yad, v'gezel v'aveda. Once you specified all these things, chayv lachas v'gachas. Tain lichit in the cern v'koisim. This we also had earlier in this Masechta. Give to me the wheat, the barley, the spelt, sheisha b'yadcha. Shvuah she'enucha biyadi. So it's a generic klal. Enuchai v'lachas. Shvuah she'enucha biyadi chitin, the sarin v'koismin. If he specifies and says, no, I'm making sure about wheat, barley, and spelt, chayv v'lachas v'yachas, chayv each one. Ramer oimer, fil oimer, even if you use the lashon yachid, and you said chita v'sa'ir v'koisemes, you didn't say chitin, sa'irin, you said it like a lashon yachid, chayv v'lachas, al kol achas v'yachas. The Gemara is going to explain what is the significance of that. Okay. Aneses upite says biti. A person says, you're ma'anes, you're mafata my daughter, and therefore you owe me money. Lo nasti, lo pitisi. It's not true. So mashbiachani, swear to me that's the case. Yarmamein. So chayiv, if it turns out that he was lying, he's chayiv shvuas bikadin. He has to bring the carbon asham. Rav Shimon Paiter, Shimon Misham Kanas, al pi atzmai. Rav Shimon says you're not chayiv because even though of course when we said before just like Shavuos Eidos, Shavuos Bikadon also is only with Tvias Mamoin, so that's only Mammon. This is a case of Kanas. Says Rashi Kivan the Oidi, if he would admit to it, Lo Machayiv Lashlumi, he wouldn't have to pay because Moedim Kanas is Potter. So Ki Kafar Nami La B'Moedim Kafar. Even though he's not denying on money because again the Moedim Kanas is Potter. Then there's the Machlok is a Moedim Kanas V'Achach Moedim. The din is okay. Fine. Rav Shimon Poiter Shin Misham Kanas Al Piatzma. Omer Lo Afal Pi Shin Misham Kanas Al Piatzma. Mishalim B'Shem Boishas Ubagam. You still have to pay because Boishas Ubagam, which does not have the category of Kanas, rather it's Mamoin, and therefore because it's Mamoin, so therefore you're not even Al Piatzma. We don't say that's Kanas, so we don't say Moida Boishas Ubagam is Potter. Okay, Ganavta Shayri, you stole my ox. I never stole your ox. What are you talking about? So again, this is a case of Tfias Mamoin, and this is a case of Shavuos Mikadain. It's not a Mikadain, but it's the same thing that there's gazelle in your Rishos. Ganavti, I stole. Yes, you're right. I stole. I did not shecht or sell. So the difference is Genev your chayiv kefil, double. When it comes to tvicha mechira, there's a chayiv of dal v'hei 4 or 5, whether it's a shor or set. Mashmiach niv yomer amin potter. So in this case, he's potter. Why? Because the din of dal v'hei is kanas, right? So it's the same thing, right? So therefore, you're going to be potter. Hamis shorcha es shori, your ox killed my ox. Lo hamis chayiv, because you have to pay the damages, which is mamoin. Hamis shorcha es avdi. Let's say your ox killed my eved, in which there is a specific amount of money where you have to pay shloshim salayim, 30 salayim. It doesn't even matter, even if the eved is only worth a dinar, a very little amount of money. It's a kanas. So because whether it's the actual value, the Torah gives a specific amount, that's kanas. You hit me. You made a bruise on my body. I never did. I never hurt you. Because that's mammon. Because you have to pay him for the damages. Your eved knocked out my tooth. And blind my eye. So which would have him be yatzel acheres. Potter, says Rashi, Knasu, Shiyotze es Avdol Cherus, for him to go free, B'shvil Aver, V'harihu Kibehem To. So the din is that why should he go free? Because you knocked out a loose tooth, L'moshel, right? So because it's a Knas. So Madav Knas Potter. Zeklal, Kol Mishalom al Pi Atzmo Chayiv, and it was Mishalom on himself, he would be Chayiv, because even if you're moida b'mamoin, you're still chayiv. V'shein mishalom al pi atzmo potter, that if you wouldn't have paid on your own admission, because moida b'knas potter, so then you're not going to be chayiv shvuos hapikadoin either. Okay, we'll stop there after that lengthy mishnah. Is there another question? Adkan.